right this time.
All right.
Oh, I did not actually. Hold on. Let me update the thumbnail. And then we'll be golden.
Okay.
Change. I mean, it's already live, but now the thumbnail's updated. Cool.
There
And
we
we've gone
go.
live.
Wait a minute.
There we are.
And I'm gone.
Huzzah! Okay. Well, I'm going to quickly put it on my phone just to see if...
Does it take a second for the thumbnail to update?
It should.
I've
Probably.
got the updated thumbnail.
Oh, okay. Mine did.
Here on...
Mine didn't do it immediately.
Yeah.
Oh, it's because it's the old one. Let me actually go in and delete that. But we're live. We're going.
All
Well,
right. Yeah, and the audio's coming through just fine?
Yeah.
See.
Oh, that is beautiful. Well, sweetness. Well,
Cool.
say... Oh, I'm going to get off that right there because we don't need that. Go away. All right. So, well, as we wait for peeps to show on up, yeah, guys, let me say, I just wanted to start off by saying something right here. I can tell that I was reading a Game of Thrones when writing parts of the Dark Rebellion.
Oh, geez.
Oh.
Oh, that's not a good sign, is it?
it's like a this like I'm like yep where like I can tell that my ire with George R. Martin began to shine through because he always sets up really cool ideas just to tear them down. And I'm about halfway through the book, halfway through editing the book, and already there are two different schemes that have fallen entirely apart. But I at least have the characters then figure out like how to then take that scheme that's fallen apart and like roll with it, which never happens in a Game of Thrones. Like if something falls apart, no one ever picks up again. They're like, well, that plan sucked. Never mind the fact that we have an entire army ready to go. Let's just go home, boys.
Pack it up.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and it's just it's so frustrating. So like I see that, like I see it in there, and I'm like, oh, that bugs me. But at the same time, it doesn't bug me quite as much because I know, because looking at it, like I realize now that was what I was thinking. That was my mindset.
Right.
Your mind space.
My mind space. The one thing is this: I really need to like figure out like what it would be like to use something like World Anvil or Campfire to help me with sorting out some stuff, because the second book elaborates so much on so many different things. I'd forgotten how much world building I throw in there. And I'm like, oh dang, I need to keep this straight.
Yeah. No, I have a gigantic Google Doc and a Microsoft Notes, or not Notes. OneNote that just is full of every thought, everything that I've had. I just write it all down there, and it helps me organize a lot.
This actually brings up a good question of, like, if you're writing something out of spite because, like, George R. R. Martin, for example, like, we don't like his writing, but if you're writing something out of spite because you're like, I'm going to do the opposite of what he did, like, does it make your writing inherently good? You know what I mean? Like, because you said you can tell that that's when you were reading Game of Thrones, but does doing something out of spite actually make it good, you know?
I don't think so. If anything, I feel like I feel like it's counterproductive.
Yeah, because I don't know. I feel like it. Go ahead, Lars.
Well,
I'm gonna go get my water real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay, bye.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we only got like, it's just us here, so. Well, I think that like looking at what I did. So one of the chapters that I'm right now the chapter I just finished editing before we started live streaming. There's this whole thing that like Jessica's got a plan kind of in her head. It's beginning to like, coalesce and everything. But Sean basically is just like, yeah, I know what you're planning. And he's like, I've seen it all right there and everything else like that. And she's just like, ah, dang it. And where I'm right now currently at is that like that scene. It's a very long scene, so it covers two chapters. Um, but after that, I need to be very cognizant of that and just be like, okay, so um, this means that as I go forward, because Jessica's still going to push through with her plans and everything, I need to make sure that there's a good reason for why she's sticking through with it. Because she's like, okay, Sean knows what I'm doing, but this is a play that can work. Because she's like, even if he now knows that I'm still trying to escape, the fact of the matter is, if I can turn his kingdom against him, he's going to be hard pressed to stop me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to make sure that I communicate that. So
Right.
in this case, like her secret plan has been revealed. That's up in the air, but that doesn't mean that she's going to abandon it because she's like, no, I've already put things into motion. I can make this work.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's going to try to see it through. And I feel like, in comparison to George R. R. Martin, really seeing things through, letting characters kind of be a little bit more stubborn and not cowards,
Yeah.
makes it feel a little bit more realistic. Because I mean that happens all the time. Plans fall through and people stubbornly push on. It doesn't just end the plot or the subplot.
Right.
In his case, right there. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry that went on for a little while. What were you going to say about like hate writing to like?
I'm trying to
this
think.
else.
I don't know. I just when you were talking about it, I was like, that's kind of an interesting. That's kind of interesting to think about because for myself, it's like there are things that I don't like in stories. It's like there are tropes that I try to avoid, or that it's like I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it my own way. But I feel like that is different from being like, I freaking hate how so and so writes a story, and it basically like I'm going to write something that is a response to this author because I hate them. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's a difference there, and I feel like it's easy to kind of get lost lost in the sauce of what you're writing when you're focused on. I'm not saying you're doing this, you specifically. I'm just saying like in general. Maybe if you look at it the way of like that could easily be something that happens in fan fiction, for example. And our conversation on the Discord today, it's like, yeah, there are a lot of things we were talking about Harry Potter. Like there are a lot of things that's like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. Where I think that's such a cool thing about fan fiction is like you can explore the world and do what you want to do because there's a lot of slack that needs to be picked up. But there's a difference between doing that and doing something like I'm writing this because I hate how this author did something. Like I feel like there's somewhere of a line that gets crossed somewhere. So I think it's kind of important to see like, am I writing this because I feel like I can do this justice, or am I writing this because I hate what was done? I think I might be having an existential crisis over my Voltron fanfic. Now I think about it because I'm like, I can have this shit turned out. I'm gonna write myself, but I'm like, am I writing that because for me, or am I writing it because I'm angry how the show went? But to be fair, I started before the show ended, and the last season, which is the worst season, aired.
Yes, you did. Yeah, because there were already some things that you were like, I don't like where this is going. I don't like that they dropped this thread, and we all knew that there was no way in the last season that they would be able to cover all of the things that we wished that they would cover.
Right.
And Ayo, we were right.
Yeah, like, and my fic takes place like right after season 4, so there's what, 2 more seasons of the show after that. I think I'm not even sure like what I'm, because I'm still processing my thoughts as I go while I'm talking about this, but I feel like, you know, I guess it really comes down to, I'm not saying like don't write some you feel like you can do it better or than the author or writer that you hate. I think it where you run into issues is it affects your writing, you know? Like you're
Well, and
going
I think
so far out of
Yeah.
your way to not do what they did.
yeah, and I think that there's a big distinction between like, oh, I'm writing this for myself or I'm writing this, because I think I can do it better. Like I think that there's nothing wrong with either of those approaches. I
Yeah, I
just
agree.
think that they're both subjected to different types of criticism. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna, depending on your attitude towards it, that could, whether you're trying to just write it for yourself, just because you're like, oh, I want to see what this would actually turn out like, or if you're trying to write it to be better. Like in both instances, you're writing it for yourself to explore it. But at the end of the day, it's like, if writing's writing, people can like it, people can hate it. At the end of the day, it's all just for you,
Yeah.
and if, as long as that's your attitude, I think then you'll be fine.
Yeah, like I kind of see it as, are we going to look at the Dark Rebellion, Lars, and be like, wow, this is basically a anti George R. R. Martin piece?
I
No, we're
saved you
not.
guys
I
some
certainly hope not. I certainly
No,
hope
like
not.
I don't think that's the case. And thank you for the pizza, Nate. Like I think
it's pineapple pizza. The
oh
best
hell
kind.
yeah,
The best kind of
the
pizza.
Oh
this is
yes,
a god tier
yes.
pizza.
Mm.
But yeah, like I feel like that's where the difference comes into play. It's like I don't see your work as a, like it loses the essence of what makes it your own piece, you know. So I
Yeah,
don't know, just an
and
interesting
I mean,
thought.
I when I wrote my Bleach fan fiction, that originated from like a place of real anger against
Right.
Kubo, because I was so ticked off by the way that Bleach ended, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I am going to take this apart and everything, and that's the way it began, and you can definitely feel that for the first few chapters. But the thing
But
was
it
is that
grew.
it grew, and eventually I
Yeah.
just ended up having a whole lot of fun with it because I was like, holy dang, I can
Right.
bring in a whole bunch of things that like I wish that we dived into like deeper, which Kubo himself had a ghostwriter
Mm.
do it for him, and people got really excited, but then they were also like really annoyed because in the end it wasn't as deep as people wanted. They're like, what the heck was this subplot about the royals? Like in the end it meant absolutely nothing. And so like I felt kind of cool because even though by this point I wasn't hate writing against Kubo anymore, I was like, I did the whole nobles thing and I actually made that like way more interesting with like different characters betraying each other and like the main characters being caught in the middle because in the story of Bleach, there are separate powers that control heaven, and one of them was never really developed. And so, like, I just kind of went on my own, much like with what Cyber Wolf Wrights put in here, like putting in like the mundane details and stuff like that. Like, I was like thinking, I thought about what was Japanese nobility like. Let me go have some fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
And just have fun with it. And so it went from hate writing to just loving what I was doing. But if you
Yeah.
hate write just to hate write, you can tell, and it's just not as good.
Yes. Yeah, and that's where a lot of fan fiction spawns from. Comes from a place of maybe not anger all the time, but frustration. Like that's how I feel like it is for me with the Voltron one and the Supernatural one, because it's like I felt like after a certain season it's like, what are you people doing? You're ruining shows that I love. So I feel like that's not an uncommon thing, and it can either, go one way or the other, where it's like you get to the point where you're like, wow, I'm writing this. This has become something that I really love, and the story just expanded into something that's awesome that I really love. Um, and I actually feel like that happens more often than the case of like, I wrote this entire fan fiction because I am angry, and you can tell the entire time. Like, I feel like, I don't know. In my perspective, I feel like that happens less often, thankfully. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing, and honestly, like when it coming to like realize that, oh, like I was writing some of the stuff from a space where it's like, oh, George R. R. Martin, why'd you do this? It
mm-hmm.
reminds me a lot of the Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini, uh,
Yeah.
where like there are certain things, like the first book is absolutely just like taking all of his favorite fantasy series and like meshing them together. But, like there are moments in other books where you can tell that he just where he totally lifted a scene from another story. And
Mm-hmm.
my favorite of those was where there's a scene right out of Alien versus Predator,
Oh, no way.
where yeah, when Aragon, Arya, when Aragon and Arya are tied, they're chained up against a wall, and there are two eggs placed in front of them, and then the eggs open up, and then the little Razak come out to like eat them, and I was like, this is right out of Alien versus Predator, because there's a whole scene where you have the sacrifice chamber, and it's the exact same setup
I
to
have
make the aliens.
I've never seen any of the Alien movies, to be honest. They're on my list.
I mean, I'll
Like all
say
of
this
them.
when it comes to the Alien. When it comes to the Alien movies, I would say Alien. I'd say Alien, and then Aliens would probably be the ones you'll actually enjoy watching. Like all the rest just gets like it just gets ridiculous from there.
Yeah, it's like weirdly for me, one of those series that I want to watch because apparently like the order of everything is kind of funky, and so I want to see how weird it is. Um oh, I had another thought when you brought up Aragon and how you felt like scenes had been taken from other stories, if you will. Like, I get that it's very hard to have an original idea. It's like, who has an original idea these days? But
Yeah.
I've never read the series, but I feel like I've heard at least that the series is basically like Star Wars, but with dragons and elves. Am I
Mm-hmm.
correct in that? I think we've talked about this series
It,
before.
yeah, yeah, we have. There, yeah, it has a very so like there a lot of the plot twists are right out of Star Wars.
Right.
Um, Scott claims that the magic is right out of the Bulgarian. I've never read the Bulgarian, so I can't
I
exactly
haven't either.
say. But like the dragons are right out of the Dragon Riders of Pern, just given the ability to speak,
Hmm.
and that's essentially it, which detracts a bit from the dragons, because like there's in the second book, uh the dragons are actually the dragons are made like way more interesting, because like dragon culture is revealed, um how the dragons came to do all these different things that they did, their history. There's some really neat stuff, but but after the second book, he never really builds on that. And so
Right.
in the first book, one of his characters says like, "Think, boy, dragons weren't just an exotic way of getting around. They were part of the team. Without them, nothing happens." After book 2, the dragons are just an exotic way to get around.
Yeah. I
That was
see.
frustrating.
I feel like I have to read the series because I feel like it is imperative for my own series. Dragons are a difficult subject to tackle, that's for sure. Because I think we had actually talked about that before when it came to Aragon. Is like, I feel like I have to read it to look at what I shouldn't do. um
Mm-hmm.
because when you say things like that, hello, when you say things like that, I'm like, oh shoot, I time to change everything. Um, panic inducing. So, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I don't like the idea of reading something that I most likely won't enjoy, even if it's for the greater good.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
I
Going
hear you there.
going back to comparing the magic systems, because I have not read the Inheritance Cycle, but I have read the Bulgariad. And I can say the Bulgariad has probably one of the most generic magic systems in all of fantasy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it actually does it very well, but it's definitely very generic. And so
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't surprise me because I feel like there's a lot of magic systems that are very similar to the Bulgariad. So
Yeah.
I don't know. There's my 2 cents.
I feel like you
Mm.
bring up a good point, though, of like, generic isn't necessarily bad because I don't know, man. I feel like today I've just had like one existential crisis after the other. Is this what
Ooh.
happens after you turn? After like, I've now that I've turned 26, now I'm like everything is just downhill from here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
you're gonna feel like that until you hit 30, and then when you hit 30, you're like, it's gonna be like new
hey.
life hits you again. You're like, whoa.
So I just have like 4 years of suffering now.
Yeah.
Like I feel sometimes I think this is part of the reason why I'm avoiding my big series is because I look back on it and I realize that is the first book that I ever was like, oh, I'm going to write a book. Oh, I'm going to write a series. You know, like it became a big thing so quickly. But I feel like since
Mm-hmm.
then, with all my story ideas, I feel like they're way more unique and I feel way more experienced now that when I look back on what I have, I'm like, like I love the characters more than anything, but there are elements of it that I worry about, to be honest, that I'm like, is this too generic? Is this, like, has this been done before? How do I make this my own thing? Because we always talk about like, just make it your own, but be honest, sometimes it's hard to figure out how to do that, where it's like, yeah, it's not bad to have something generic, but if something is generic, if you're in the grocery store and there's 5 different kinds of generic brands of mac and cheese, does it really matter what brand you get because they're all the
Yes.
same? But like,
You
how
gotta
do
get
you
Kraft.
but that's not a generic brand, okay?
Okay, that's fair.
But
Fair.
like, yeah, like it's hard because it's something like with certain fantasy tropes, especially, it's really hard to be like, how do I make this my own thing? I don't have the answer to that question.
So here. Well, I want to kind of like, man, because when you bring up Camille, like there's so much I want to say in that, but coming actually to the idea of dragons, just because, man, I mean, I personally love dragons. I've got a friend who's just like, why do you want to keep on like pursuing dragons? She's like, dragons aren't that interesting. And I'm like, dragons are so
Lies.
amazing. And she's just
So
like, it's like
lies.
most of the things that you can do with dragons have already been done,
Lies.
which
Right.
was in part what inspired me to try to tackle Whitefire, where my dragons are so crazy unique, and it's okay to borrow elements from what others have done. Like, I love what Brandon Mull has done with dragons in the Fablehaven series, where each dragon is entirely unique. And I'm like, I'm taking that. I love that idea. Let's now build in a little bit more. And I went to a panel at the Phoenix Comic Con that was all just about dragons, and Christopher Paolini was there, and I was just all like, my nemesis, the guy who ruined a story that I
So
liked, like right there. He's actually a really cool dude, and he actually answered a question. I asked a question to the entire panel, and he was the one to first answer it, and I loved his answer. Where I was like, what can you do to make dragons more unique? And he said, be arrogant about it. And I was like, and he then explained saying everyone is going to tell you that they've seen this before.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is you have to tell them, yes, but you haven't seen me do it, and you're gonna love it.
Period.
And like I loved that. I love that advice, and so I've just kind of been running with that
Like
ever
that.
since. And so like yeah, so like I've realized that I've borrowed plenty of elements from other stories while trying to put together the world of Whitefire, and
Right.
I've just learned to just let that go because this is my story.
Right. I feel like when it comes down to my KD series, I'm not gonna say any names of my books at this time. Sorry everyone. But y'all know which one I'm talking about, obviously. I feel like when it comes down to it, it's like the two big things for me that I really want to evaluate is my magic system, because like I like how the mechanics work of it, with like how the limitations and the rules behind it, um but I still want to like look at it in a sense of, because most of it for for the most part, that was so redundant. For the most part, it's very like generic, so it's like how can I, it's like yeah, like what you said, it's like this has been done before, but how can I do it in a way that changes it? So it's like that's my big thing, and I really feel like the dragons are a big element as well, because like I feel like I have a lot of cool aspects about them, and how that they are like they all have their separate cultures and everything. But I look back on it and I'm like, my prequel series kind of portrays that better than my main one does. Or you hear like stories of dragons, like that happen and take place in that world, of like unique cases
Mm-hmm.
of things that they do and whatnot. But the dragons like currently in the main series don't do that, and so I'm like, are they falling a little flat? Does that make sense? Like,
Well, and I think one of the big
Yeah.
things with
yeah,
that series particularly is just the fact that that was kind of your first series. And I
exactly.
feel like your first book that you write will always fall flat. It's not
Right.
until you've grown as an author that you can go back and actually extend it. And so I
Yes.
think, if anything, it shows the fact that the prequel series, which you wrote later, um,
Yeah.
or currently are writing later, just
Yeah.
shows how much growth you've had as an author. And so when you do go back to that first series, they're not going to be flat anymore.
Right. And
That's what I expect. Yeah.
yeah, and now I feel like I'm at the point where it's like I feel like because I finished the first draft and I'm currently like in the editing process with that, but now I feel like I need to kind of take a step and be like, maybe before I continue with the writing and editing process, I flush things out more in
Hmm.
terms of those concerns that I have, before moving forward, because now that I finished the first draft, I look back on it and I'm like, holy shit, who wrote this? That's terrible. I feel like I have a better sense of what can change. Um, because I don't want to like write the whole thing and be like, this is the biggest piece of trash that should never see the light of day, because it's like, no, your stories deserve to see the light of day, but sometimes they have to go through a big refining process,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. And I think I
Yeah.
stand
Yeah. So
by the
some sorts
fact
get raided a
that,
few times.
Yeah.
yeah, I stand by the fact that I feel like every story is going to be riddled with flaws. And so don't worry too much about that.
Yeah.
I kind of came to the realization working as a bookseller. I was like, you know what? I personally find there to be way too many flaws in something like Twilight to really be able to enjoy Twilight. But I think that people who enjoy Twilight is totally fine. The difference for
Right.
them and for me is the fact that the flaws that I see in Twilight are not flaws that bothered those people, if that makes
Right.
sense. It's like,
Right. And
so
they're most likely flaws that you wouldn't want in your own writing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so
Yeah.
it's like flaws are going to be there whether you like it or not. And so your favorite series, your favorite whatever book, show, TV, whatever it is, a movie, they are all like riddled with flaws, and it's just a matter of, do these flaws actually detract the experience? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I
And
like that.
yeah, like what Cyberwolf said, that they love Twilight, and that's totally fine. And that's something that I kind of had to come to terms with. Was like,
Right.
yeah, no, I don't like Twilight. The flaws in that are definitely like not to my taste. They're definitely flaws that bother me, but there's
Right.
nothing wrong with enjoying that story because the flaws don't bother you. If that
Right.
makes sense.
No, I agree. That kind
Yeah.
of feels like the inheritance cycle. It's like
Mhm.
it's hard to at the same time be like, this is trash, because that was the first thing that he wrote, that when he was really young, and that was the first thing that he had
Yeah.
written, which one is extremely impressive. But if you look at it through that lens, that would be like all of us taking our first stories and being like, here we go out into the world. Like, yeah, it's really easy to look at that and be like, that's trash, so it's tough.
Yeah.
This is not very
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to kind of on the same topic, but like take it over into the realm of editing. Because I definitely agree with you, Nate. Like when it comes to like even some really great stories, like I've been thinking, like I don't know why, but I've been thinking now for like the past week about Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is such a great show, but there are some mistakes, and
Yeah.
like I've been wondering like if I want. I mean, I don't like to watch stuff to tear it apart unless it's like something I know is going to be awful, because I do
Right.
like to enjoy reading, and I do want to enjoy what I'm watching. But like I'm wondering like should I like how interesting would that be? But in any case, to like when you look at a story, especially one that you wrote a while back and you come back to it and you're editing it, like for instance the Dark Rebellion. Um, I've just one of the things I've been especially learning this week is just wow, I've got to just laugh at it, and that's a hard
Yeah.
thing to do. It's like I realized there are a couple times I'm like I can get mad right now, like I can be legitimately mad at myself for making such a stupid mistake right here, or writing something that's so bad, and I could get mad. And in the moment, I decide I'm not going to get mad. Instead, I'm going to laugh, because getting mad is not going to change anything. Laughing at least will feel good, and
Right.
then I'll get to it.
Yeah. I'd like to make a side comment real quick, because Jed just messaged our messenger group, and he said, Nate did not respond to my comment. Now I'm just a weirdo. And I haven't had the stream open, so I'm like, what is he talking about? His first comment is, Nate
Yeah.
Kinda
His
looking
comment about
fabulous. Nate want to take a nap in your beard. So
okay, please do, or Jed. Jed, if you're still on the stream, I'm planning on coming down to your neck of the woods this weekend, so let's do something. I
Awesome.
clicked
Oh my
on something
gosh.
again. I keep doing that. There we go. There we go. I think that's better. Wow. Okay.
Ooh,
Yes.
Jerry here. Ray and the Last Dragon. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I need to watch. I need to watch that again, because I'll be honest. While I was watching it, I was in the process of getting Amazon to publish, um, Knights of Halley Cruise, and that was a dark night for me. I was
Yeah.
so angry at so many things.
Yeah.
Right.
So I got so angry at the movie, and I'm like, I need to give the movie a second chance.
Yeah. I actually really liked Raya, the Last Dragon. Is it Raya? Yeah, Raya, not Rayla. Is there an L in there?
Raya.
Yeah.
There's
It
no
is.
L.
Yeah,
Okay. There's no L.
Rayla, however, is in the Dragon Prince, and she is awesome.
That's where I was getting it from. Yeah. Yeah, no, and I enjoyed it. I just think that the first like 15 minutes was too top heavy. Way too much exposition right off the bat.
Yes.
Other than that, like it was a great movie. Definitely some jokes were trying a little too hard, but it was a Disney movie. You know, Disney does a great job with most of their movies,
Um,
if not fantastic. Well, okay, they do at least a good job. Not always
yeah.
great. So
I I
Mhm.
I have a hard time like sometimes I feel like when I watch something when I'm by myself or if I'm just with one other person, I am like, yeah, that was good. Moving on. It depends on who I'm with cuz I remember I watched The Last Jedi with a friend of mine who he's pretty easygoing. If he enjoys the movie, if it looks good, then he likes it, right? And so I remember watching it with him, and we were like, "Wow, hype!" And then I watched it again, and I was like, "That was the dumbest shit I have ever seen.
no,
This
and
movie
I
is
agree
crap."
with you. First
It
time I
really
watched it,
depends.
I was like, "Wow, that was great." And then the second time I watched it, I was like, "Why did I ever think this was great?"
Exactly. So I
Yeah,
mean, that's kind of how I feel like I've only seen it once. Um, and I remember
Lucky you.
watching Raya and the. I'm talking about Raya and the Last Dragon. I saw it once. Spencer and I watched it in
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking
theaters.
about the last Jedi. I was like,
I
lucky you.
have seen the Last Jedi 2 times too many. But no, I like we watched it and like I don't know, man. If you have like an emotion, if there's one scene in a movie that makes me emotional, like it already sets it above. And so the dad in that movie is not only attractive, but he's also a really good dad. And so of course I
yeah,
cried over him. And I think that got me a little messed up.
Mhm.
But afterwards, like we talked about a couple things where it's like I didn't like X, Y, and Z about it, but it was pretty good. And but now I look back because I've talked to a few other people about it, and I'm like, oh, I got their perspectives, and I was like, shoot, you're right. Shoot, you're right. I don't know how I feel about it. Like honestly, I have really mixed feelings about the movie, and I feel like it's easy to overlook them when something looks really pretty. Last Jedi was like that too. Like
Mhm.
it's a good looking movie, but
yeah.
I don't know. That movie is so weird to me because I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that's fair. I definitely
Oh,
have to
definitely.
watch it again for like a more objective view of it. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I finished the film, I was like, you know what? It was solid. It was
Yeah,
solid. Yeah.
yeah. It was
So
interesting. Real side tangent sort of thing. I think this is the importance of like if you just want to watch a movie and enjoy it, then by all means. But if you want to
yeah.
like, really see how you feel about something, I think it's
I
important
think
getting different perspectives because I remember I was talking to
Mhm.
a friend of mine and she grew up in a household where her mom was like emotionally abusive. She has like no contact with her mom
Ooh,
now, which is really good. Her mom is not
very
a good
good.
person. But
Yeah.
it was very interesting getting her perspective because for her, she's like, I hated that movie because it just felt like what is the girl's name that they butt heads like the entire time?
I
The
can't
the
remember.
Oh, what is her name?
The one
I
with the
can't.
like
I can't
the
remember her name, but
side
I
cut.
see it.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
I see her so clearly in my head.
yes. I
She
can't.
was cool.
I cannot remember like, but it was so interesting getting my friend's perspective because she was like the entire time she lied to her as a kid, and the entire time she's fighting against her, and it just felt like they tried to justify her actions when they were abusive because
Yeah.
that was her perspective. She grew up in an environment where she now recognizes those signs. And for me, that kind of was like something that had clicked where I was like, holy crap, you're right. So,
I think Spencer just put the name in the chat. Is that what that is,
Namari,
Spencer?
yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
Namari.
I didn't. I'm
Thanks.
literally in the chat. Hi
Yeah, I know.
guys.
I didn't know you were in it.
Yeah, hi.
So completely agree with what Jed said here about make me love the characters before the world. And I feel like
Yes.
that's where the
Yeah.
biggest downfall of Raya the Last Dragon comes from is just the fact that it's like, hey, here's everything that's going on with the world at the
Mhm.
beginning. Now enjoy the characters. Don't do that.
Yes.
Do the opposite. As a matter of fact, it's much
Mhm.
more efficient to like explore the world through these characters. It's better for, the characters to have a conversation about what's going on in the world rather than just
Right.
this exposition dump at the beginning.
Right. Because
Yeah.
even if a
Yeah, when
world
you
is
get-
pretty, it'll feel empty without good characters in it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the part where, I mean, like, I know that right here, Cyberwolf has said that it's like, yeah, hasn't seen it already, but, so I'm not going to spoil anything right here, but I'm just going to say that one of the best moments to have, like, really kind of gone into more about the world, there are two different scenes where Rhea, where the, it's not Rhea, but, crap, why am I forgetting now the name of the dragon? Where the dragon talks about her past, and wow, like those were moments that could have been like really really amazing for like sticking like this is what this ancient conflict was, this is why we are in the world that we are today, and like let the characters make those connections, and that would have made it even all the more emotional, I think, especially for one scene.
Yeah. Maybe we just need to have like a viewing party where we watch it again and then rip it to shreds.
Yeah, that would
I
be fun.
mean, critique it
That would be
fairly.
fun. That would
I
be-
mean,
Movie
Harem
night
Retreat?
when?
Yeah, Harem Retreat maybe?
There you go.
ooh,
That would be fun.
I
that would
like
be
that
fun.
idea.
We'll record it
Yeah,
and
so that
post
Harem
our
Retreat's coming up.
highlights.
Yes. I'll bring my handy dandy notebook.
So I want to loop back around to parents, because that was what our topic was going to be for this
Yeah.
live stream, and we've started talking about it with
Yes.
that last little bit. And I want to pose this question to you guys, because I feel like this is an important question, although I don't really know how to word this question, so bear with me here. But
Okay.
what ways can we as authors involve the parents more?
Well, for one, you don't kill them
Ooh.
off.
Yeah, I think so. I was actually thinking about this right before the live stream, because I've been neck deep in the Bunny Girl Senpai books and show right now as I've been preparing for my rant. Well, I've already done the rant, but
Right.
anyway. The video is coming out sometime soon when I actually have time to edit a video. But I really like the way that they handled the parents in this one, because it's totally fine to write out your parents, but I feel like you can be so much more creative than just killing them off, you
Right.
know? And number two, don't be afraid to include your parents. But the way that Bunny
Yeah.
Girl does this, and, you know, slight spoiler warning, is basically the mom kind of develops, you know, mental issues. We'll say that. We'll put it vaguely.
How does the book put it? Because it seems to me like, and yeah, like I'm trying to avoid major spoilers here, but like she has a mental breakdown because she can't handle what's happening to her daughter.
Exactly.
And then when her son begins displaying the similar issues, she's out, because it's like
Yeah.
there's no way to explain it.
Yeah.
And it's
Exactly.
hard because we get that she cares for her children, but she just can't handle the fact that she can't care for them.
Yeah.
What's
No,
happening.
and that's exactly it. And so it's like that specifically happens in the 5th arc, which unfortunately only the first 4 arcs are available in English, and I don't have access to Japanese novels, nor can I read Japanese, so I don't know what the 5th arc actually, like from the novel's point of view, what it has in there. But yeah, no, that's from just the show itself. It's like, yeah, no, she has this mental breakdown that just wrecks her to the point where she has to be put into an institution. And her father, being, you know, a salary man, a super busy guy all the time, spends every chance he can with his wife, taking care of her. And so since the wife can't, you know, just process what's happening to her children, they essentially live on their own, and their father pays for the rent, pays, you know, help supports them. And so it's like, and every once in a while, you know, you see the parents kind of check in. And there's this really precious moment that I actually just read last night where the father like shows up, like, hey, how are things going? You know, and it's like, it's a really good moment, even though like the parents are written out of the story, they're still playing a part of it, you know? And so it's like, if you are going to write them out, whether that's a creative way or if you're going to just straight out kill them, which you can, it's fine. I still vote that you try and be more creative than that. But if you are going to write them out, at least make them still part of your story.
Right.
Yeah, make part of somehow. So we have right here in the chat, we have a comment right here from Kylie saying, you can teach the kids valuable life lessons or simply bonding with one another on their favorite things. Like that's a great way to use parents because there's a trend that if the parents are alive, it's an unhealthy relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that can be good for the story, but it's been done so many times.
Yeah.
It's really neat to explore a healthy relationship. And like one of the things that like I know I'm the one who has power over this, but it's for the plot, and so I'm kicking myself and I'm congratulating myself and kicking myself at the same time for doing this. But in my book series, The Legend of the Ten Lords, in the first book, you get to see the parents for our two main characters, Ben and Jessica. Ben doesn't have that close of a relationship with his parents, and it shows. Like they're there, they're nice, but he doesn't
Right.
rely on them. Jessica, on the other hand, she has a great relationship with her family. She teases her brothers, and they tease her back. It's all good banter. Her dad, and she fight over cookie dough, and her mom is just precious and cares about her
And genuinely concerned.
Yeah.
and is genuinely concerned.
A cookie.
Yes.
Oh, Jed.
And-
Jed.
Yes, Jed doing the part. Jed reading the part of Jessica's mother, and like it's a great and like it was a fun family dynamic to write. But then in the second book, like you get almost nothing about the families,
Mhm.
and it's very noticeable. Like, and that's one of the things that makes the second book feel darker and grimmer is that you don't have that kind of happiness, especially for Jessica, who definitely needs it because she's cut off from her family. And
Yeah.
like that, and like that's an interesting way of like playing around with the whole family dynamic. I'm not killing off the parents. The parents are very much alive. The parents mean a lot to the main character. What happens when you steal that dynamic away from the character, and what will it be like if she can get it back?
Yeah.
Jed just said in the chat, he said if the world is rough enough, a teen will be expected to do adult tasks and missions, even if they are responsible parents. I think that is a good way as well. You know,
Yeah.
what kind of world are you working with? That gives
Yeah.
you some leeway.
Yeah, and I've kind of found myself in kind of a weird little bit of a writing pickle, in the sense of like in my Guardian story, which we'll see if that's what the title actually remains as, but basically I have these very responsible parents. I have this very loving family, very close knit family that's kind of the center point of the story. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, these parents wouldn't want these teenagers doing these reckless things. And so,
Right.
how do I actually write a relationship with these teenagers and have it be a close relationship with
How
the
do they
family?
coexist?
Exactly, without them
Right.
being like, no, you can't go out and save the world. Leave that to the adults, but it's like,
Right.
no, these teens need to be the ones to do it. And so it's like, how, and this is something I'm just gonna have to play with, but it's like, how do I actually write something like that?
Right. And I feel like, it's a little bit harder to do when you have younger main characters or if you're more in like a modern setting, because sometimes when you're dealing with like fantasy, for example, if you're doing heavy inspiration from IRL stuff, it's like, yeah, if you're younger, you're going to be expected to do more things rather than like if you have an urban fantasy sort of thing where it's like, no, sorry, your curfew's at 10. You can't go and fight this wizard. You're 14 years old,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to figure out how those two can coexist together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And it's like in my first series in that same world, it takes place in a medieval setting. And one thing that I did is because there's two kind of timelines that run not parallel, but there's like when the character was younger and when the character is older. And it's like when she's younger, she has a lot of interactions with her mom, but when she becomes older, her mother passes away from a undescribed illness. And so it's like, yeah, she's now all alone in this big scary world chasing after a dragon. Heh, back to dragons.
Right. Yeah, I honestly I feel like that's part of the reason why I have avoided doing characters that are young, because it's like, ooh, I don't like
Yeah.
dealing with that. I think my youngest character that I write a POV for is he starts off as 16 years old. But honestly, because we have like been talking about this for a while now, it's kind of started when we had our writing party with Mary, whenever that was, I can't remember. I've literally been thinking like, ever since we had that, I've been like, I think I'm going to change something really big about my series in regards to the parents.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, and that's kind of like,
Yeah.
how do I want to go about that? Because I am now thinking about one of the parents needs to die, unfortunately. But like well, shit, spoilers. His death is the catalyst to the entire plot. But the other parent, they don't need to be dead actually, and I think there's room for, like we've said, like I think there's room for these two things to coexist. And now I'm kind of considering like, okay, well, how can I go about that? How would that change things? Because it's tough.
Yeah.
I think you need to be pretty careful when it comes to something like that too, because there was a book I read just a little earlier this year that like completely it had a great relationship with the parents, but kind of that relationship with the parents was also a lot of the pressure on the like main characters, like their expectations and all that kind of stuff. But then you had the dad die at the end of the first book, and you start reading the second book, and because the dad died, everything they built, like the main characters built for themselves in the first book, was completely nullified, and it ruined the entire story for me.
Is this the book that I think you're talking about?
Yes, I'm not necessarily saying a name because I don't really want to spoil it, but I can if you want me to.
DM me that name, because I think I know which one you're talking about, but I want to make sure.
I'm not worried about in that regards. I'm not worried about that because where the death takes place is not my worry. The death of that parent is not the worry. It's the other parent being not dead.
Yeah, that was the book I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think that kind of comes back to like, you know, you can still write out the parents without outright killing them. That's one of the things that I really wanted to do with my light novel series that I've been working on, is that, like, yes, the mother dies in the first chapter and the father is MIA, but everybody thinks he's dead, but he's not, and he's trying to get back to his family. Yeah, he's trying to get back to his family. And so it's like, you know, it's like he's been written out, and so now the children can go off and do their whole storyline, but now the father has an opportunity to have his own storyline where he is trying to, you know,
connect,
be a father. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a precious father. Yeah.
Right.
And so it's like you can do so much more interesting things if you don't just outright kill him. There are instances in which it's like, yes, you know, this character needs to die, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because, you know, plot demands it, or character. No, okay, let me rephrase that. Not because plot demands it. Not because plot, but because character growth needs to happen.
Right. And like sometimes it is frankly super unavoidable. And it kind of comes down to, it's like, I don't really have a choice, and that is the fate that I have accepted in terms of this series, where it's like, sorry, you need to die. You, on the other hand, I'm thinking about you. But no, I like that. I like that it's like, you don't have to necessarily kill them to kind of put them in their little, because the current book that I'm writing now, granted they're adults, and like someone said in the chat, it's that they're writing adult characters. It's easier to do this than it is if you have like younger characters. But like in my current story, her parents are alive. She has a great relationship with her parents, but now that she is married, she is in a completely different country than they are. And so her new life and all the shenanigans that happened then are very separate from the life that she has with her parents. So they're not there to really help her with anything or give advice or to be like, what the hell are you doing type of thing. But like, they're not dead. But sometimes you can't do that. Like, sometimes it's a lot harder to figure out what to do with your parents. It is the easiest route, it seems, to kill off your parents, but
it's not always
I
the
don't.
best.
Yeah, like I don't think it's always necessary.
Yeah, and that I remember.
And,
do you guys remember the conversation in which there was a specific character that I was going to kill off, and I just couldn't, like, it just ruined too much of the story, and I was like, I still want this character to be killed off. Do you know who I'm talking about by chance? I don't want to spoil any names, but I mean, it's in Guardians.
Wait, say that again, because I had a stroke.
Guardians. One of the characters from Guardians. I was going to kill her off.
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna kill her off, and I was like, I can't. Like, I want to have this experience, this character growing moment for the character, but I can't feasibly kill off this character. It would break the plot. And so then I was like, what do I do? And and I had to start sifting through so many different ideas, and I eventually came up with the idea that's okay, I can still write out a scenario in which this character gets written out of the story, and I can have this experience, but without outright killing the character.
Yeah.
Do you guys edit each other's work and give each other feedback? Yes, all the time.
Yes, we do.
Not so much edit, but I mean, Camille might do some grammar fixes for me because I'm real bad at that. But for the most part, they'll read our stuff, and all of us here at the Harem read each other's stuff and give feedback. But if you guys want feedback, just let us know. Go on our Discord. We are happy to read anything. We did some with Mary Sue the other day, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, the amount of times that I have come to Lars for
Mary's
feedback.
Den, thank you.
It's so close.
I was like, Mary Sue is not right. I knew it wasn't right, but it was the only thing in my brain.
Yeah, say Nate helped me out with Sandwich Desperados with figuring out stuff about actually what it would be like to take a car out either for drag racing on a track or just what kind of cars might do well. And it's I still had creative freedom to kind of do what I wanted, but at least having some sort of information that made me not sound too much like a noob helped out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like hold on, I'm responding. Yeah, I feel like we kind of have our own circle of feedback because we're all a lot more familiar with each other's. So what you guys see on our
because we've been doing it for 6 years.
Right.
We've been together for almost 6 years. So we're all pretty familiar with each other's work.
Exactly. So I'm what you guys see on the Discord is not, we don't dive into our stuff a ton, I would say. I feel like that's more for you guys than it is for us because it's we have our own Harem messenger group, but then I have a chat with Nate and Lars where we talk about story stuff even more in depth, and then if I want to go super in depth, I usually message Lars directly. I'm so sorry, I bug you all the time.
Lars is our secret weapon, seriously.
Yeah, it's bad. But yeah,
Camille will also talk to me in person about a lot of stuff, and we just nerd out.
Yeah,
and I do the same with Scott.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, quite a bit.
I've heard so much about Nate's stories.
Yeah.
We'll just go
And-
on walks.
And then
at
I
a
just
time.
and then I just overwhelm everyone. I'm like, here.
Yeah. I'm like, Lars, how do you
Here's-
keep all of this straight?
I've gone insane. That's how.
Yeah. Lars is not one
for
man
those of you-
anymore.
Yeah, for those of you who are on the Discord, there's I think one bit of like writing advice that's now like buried, where I took an exposition piece and I threw it on out there, and I actually did that after like going through a heavy edit on it because I wanted to get feedback because I was like I wanted to see what would happen if people who had no idea about the story, like what they would say, like because I was like I want someone who's a noob to at least be able to follow this, because if someone who has no idea what's going on can follow this, excellent, I've written it right. I've written this exposition right. If not, then I need to go back and redo it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that there's a good there's a lot of wow, I can't think of the word that I want here. Value in having people who are at different levels of familiarity with your story. There's a lot of the times that I'm like, okay, how does this sound to somebody who knows nothing of my story? And so I'll call my brother and be like, hey, yo, what do you think about this story idea? And he's like, that sounds pretty neat. Why not? I was like, okay. So that's a that's a good sign. And then, I might go more if I want something that's more in depth, more like further on in my story. Then I obviously reach out to one of you guys here on the Harem. And so yeah, like if you're not already on our Discord, anybody who's listening, go join it, because that's what Camille's Harem was always meant to be, was an online writing group, because we saw how beneficial it is for us to have this writing group, which you get to see me and Camille, and then the rest of us here are all no camera homies, but that's fine.
They don't really exist.
They don't exist. They're all just
They're
figments of the
robots.
imagination.
They're robots.
Eventually, I'll get the right camera. Say school is nearly done, and I will be free, and I'll be able to actually go and do stuff again.
Yay.
I'm just an entity that's here.
He's
just a
actually a
frog
frog
boy.
in a suit.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, that's not an icon. That's actually him.
That's me.
That's a live
He
feed.
hasn't moved this entire time.
Yeah. And so it's like,
there's
seriously, join us on the Discord, chat with us. We'd love to hear your stories, and we'd love to help if we can.
There's actually something I want to quickly throw out there. I know this is backtracking a bit after we've plugged the Discord and everything, but this is something that we had chatted about when we said we wanted to kind of talk about mothers. Also, like having motherly or fatherly figures, because sometimes, yeah, you've got to kill off a parent because a combination of plot and character development demands it. And that doesn't mean that you can't introduce other characters in who help to fill that role, and that can be and you can then explore some really great moments right there, like diving back to like an example for me, like from from my story Whitefire, the main character, her parents are killed, but her cousin kind of becomes a mother figure to her, because the cousin is the one who constantly is like, hey, you got to take care of yourself, remember to love yourself, don't get yourself killed. I know you're on a big quest for revenge and everything, but you've got to take care of yourself, otherwise what is it worth? And that's something that Whitefire herself doesn't fully understand until another character shows up in her life, and then she can then come to realize just how much her cousin was trying to help her to understand and to see, and like that can then make their relationship blossom a whole lot more. So like you can have a lot of fun with these kind of dynamics. It doesn't have to necessarily be an older person, but a person who steps on in and is like, I want to take care of you, I want to help guide you, because I care about you.
I feel like it's less of an issue of having a lack of actual mothers in role, even though personally I feel like there is. It's very easy to be like, her mom is dead. I feel like it's less of an issue of that and more of an issue of just a general lack of female mentors / role models in stories. A lot of times you see that in fantasy or in sci-fi, that it's very heavily leaning towards male mentor. Like, you see that a ton. So I think it's more that in a general sense, because it's like there is a lot of value in having a female mentor role, and that could be filled in any regard. You know, like, it doesn't just have to be a mother role, like you said. Like, they don't have to be super old or wise or whatever. I just feel like it's like there is just a general lack of it overall, and I wish that there wasn't. It makes me sad.
So I like what sorry to kind of derail the conversation here, but I like what Cyberwolf says here. Says, my story feels a bit odd to me now that I think about it, because my main character has both of her parents, but her romantic interest will act sort of like a mentor. I think that's great. Keep with that. That sounds awesome.
I'm looking at so like big brother versus mother versus father versus mentor. They don't have to be much older than the character to be a parental figure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree with that as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Well-
I feel like a lot of times you see like an older sibling type thing that kind of like in some way that mentor role or parental role can be filled by any age.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like there has to be a certain criteria of it.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, especially if you have siblings, because the older sibling will usually naturally slot into that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I really like about the Bunny Girl Senpai series, is just the fact that, like, the main character, like, he kind of has to play the act of a father, but also be the big brother to his sister, who's, is
Right.
so emotionally scarred from being bullied that she can't leave the house,
Right.
and so it's like he has to take care of her, and he has his own life to worry about and all this stuff, and so it's like it's just a precious relationship, and I love them so much.
Yeah.
Too
Like,
precious.
I don't know. I feel like it's easy to write that too when you have your own sibling relationships,
Mhm.
because it's like I'm the youngest, but I look at the difference between my relationship between my older sister versus my older brothers, and it's like my relationship between me and my sister is extremely different than it is with my older brothers.
Yeah.
Type of thing. So it's like,
Same.
you really have to look at how our dynamics different. I feel like there's a lot of room to kind of go off of that. I don't know. I'm kind of hitting again, like, since this was the main thing we were talking about, like having that female mentor role. Like, there is a difference between having a female mentor and a male mentor, and I think if you struggle with kind of figuring out, like, oh, how do I want to go about that, I think, like, look at yourself. Like, who fill the mentor roles in your life? How do they fulfill them differently? And for me, like, I look at my siblings, because my sister and I, she's the oldest and I'm the youngest, but we're really close. And our dynamic is extremely different than it is with me and my two older brothers. Like, for her, she fulfills that mentor role for me, type of
Yeah.
thing. Like, really look, you can, like, look at your own life if you struggle kind of figuring
Yeah.
out how to
There's
place
actually-
that role.
There's the movie Memoirs of a Geisha, that has a couple of different female mentor characters within the story, and it's interesting because you have one who's just, she's extremely harsh. She's there essentially to make money off of the young girl, whereas the other one, she's also, I mean, it's all a business, but the other one
Right.
actually cares about her, and so you get to see the difference, and the difference in approach between the two mentors means everything for the main character, because the second one, because she shows genuine care, genuine love, helps her to really fill the role of geisha, and to confront some really difficult choices with the courage that her station calls for. and she
Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
have been able to do that without the second mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that movie is so sad. I don't
It
know how it
is.
compares to the book, but the movie is really sad.
I've never seen it, and I really want to. I love sad
good.
movies though, so it's perfect for me. I
Oh.
like crying. Is that a weird thing to admit that I really like to
Never.
cry?
Sometimes
Never.
you just
Okay.
gotta get it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that
No, and I
Spencer?
think, looking at your own life examples is one of the best advice that I think anybody can give you. They always say
Yeah.
you should write what you know, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like you should write a memoir of yourself. It just
Right.
means like write concepts, write things that you understand. If you understand the relationship between, for example, my brother is very close to me in age.
Right.
And so we have a very different relationship to my younger sister were, much further apart in age.
Right.
Like great relationship in both instances. But those two relationships are so very different. And those are two relationships that I want to kind of use as a backbone within other relationships with my stories. And so
Yeah.
use what you know.
Right. I feel like on that same line, it's like I don't know what it's like to be an older sibling. So I can write from the perspective of, and I have written from the perspective of having like an older mentor relationship. But at the same time, I also have characters that are kind of that role of a mentor. And I realize it's like, I always grew up being the oldest, like one of the oldest people in my friend groups. And as I've grown up, I've kind of taken on that role of of that like older sibling mentor role. Wow, I just had a moment of like,
I just realized that you really were the oldest in our friend group growing up,
Mhm.
but like by a day and by like 2 weeks.
yeah, it still counts.
Camille
Still
has
counts.
always been a mentor in our household.
Yeah.
I won't say the nickname that you've given her because I don't want her wrath to come down upon me.
Me?
The nickname
I've given
for
her?
Yeah.
Oh.
Why can't I remember the nickname I've given her?
what's the
Oh.
nickname?
I don't think we want that. Do you want that on the live stream?
Can I have a hint?
It has the word mommy in it.
A mommy?
Are you talking
Here,
about? I'm afraid.
Oh.
Are you writing it in the?
Yeah.
I'm out of the loop on this one. I can't help.
Nate is typing.
Oh boy.
Now spent.
Is it that one?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the
Oh.
one. He beat me to it.
I hate you. I'm not.
She's our mother.
Yeah, I'm the mother. Not
That's the
that.
one.
That is an abomination. No, we can't. We don't talk about that.
The expression that Camille had though.
Once I realized it was like dread.
That's why I
Panic.
wasn't gonna say it on the live stream because
Thank
I
you.
didn't want the internet for it to be immortalized on the internet, but now it is.
Yes,
So
go Stein.
you're welcome. You're
Yeah.
welcome. Well, I think this has been a good time. It might be a good chance to wrap up here. Any last thoughts that you guys want to touch on before we close?
I don't really think of
Ooh.
anything.
I mean, we definitely beat this horse into good glue. So.
Pulpy.
I mean, that's one way you could say that, Lars. I'm not saying it's a good way to say that, but that is an option as well.
No, it's not.
In which you can say that.
I don't know why I went with that, but it did.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Everybody in the chat, you've been wonderful. This was a fun time. Join us in 2 weeks. We'll do another one, and join us on the Discord so we can keep the conversation going. We're always, I mean, I'm not quite as active as the other people here, but that's because I ain't got time, fam.
You're a busy boy.
I'm a busy boy.
Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm quickly checking up something. Okay, time wise. Okay. This was something that had been in the live chats last time. That was when there was a whole debacle with the episode True Colors for Amphibia not getting released on time. But The rumor is that will be coming out next week, and if you guys want to, I will probably be ranting and screaming on Discord for that episode when it comes out. So
I will be at a wedding, so I will not be joining. I apologize.
Wait, what day is that?
The 22nd. The 22nd should be when it comes out. So like Disney is throwing a marathon, and I'm thinking that I might just jump on and like marathon Amphibia all the way up to the end. So,
Well, you enjoy that. I am gonna finish taking my 8-hour test that I'm only halfway through, and then I'm gonna die. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time.
Yep.
Bye,
Good
Mom.
night, everybody.
There it is.